part of that cost and financial implications is also related to taxes, right? There is what we lovingly refer to as the short-term rental loophole, where if you hit the criteria, you can turn what was previously passive income in your rental into non-passive income. Hi, I'm Bette Hochberger, CPA, CGMA. This channel covers tax strategies and preparation, real estate finance, and more. Come learn how to grow your business and keep your wealth. Today, we're going to talk about, should you turn your rental into an Airbnb? So talking about going from long-term to short-term, right? Some pros, some cons, so let's dive in. Market demand, right? Before you get into the short-term rental market, you're going to need to see what kind of demand there is in the area. So if it's a really maybe like rural or an area that doesn't have like big attractions, there might not be a lot of demand for that type of a property in that area. If we go into our next item, which is legal and regulatory, sometimes there's no demand for it because it's not legal, right? There's some areas it's not allowed. I believe it's Daytona Beach doesn't allow Airbnbs by the beach there. So you really need to see like, A, is this an area where this is something popular? And B, is it something we can even do if we want to do it? Maybe also if you're in a neighborhood like an HOA, there might be regulations that don't allow that kind of a rental to go on in that neighborhood. So you really have to do a little bit of research to see if it's something that people want. Is it going to be, viable as a business? And then are you even allowed to do that kind of a thing in the property? Next, you got to look at the costs and the financial implications. If this property was previously a long-term rental and it's maybe not furnished, or it's looking a little run down, like maybe you had a tenant leave and now you want to turn it to an Airbnb, well, that's going to take a little bit of money to set that up. People who are running Airbnbs or people who are staying in Airbnbs, right? You're not looking at your first home, right? Where maybe after you bought the place and you're broke because all the money you saved up just went into buying the house. So you're sleeping on an air mattress and eating off of paper plates, right? That is not generally the experience that guests looking to stay in Airbnbs are looking for. So you're gonna have to think about that. Like, what's it going to take to properly furnish, properly set up, and equip a new Airbnb rental? It is a significant financial contribution that you're going to have to put into that property. Now, at the same time that you have this extra setup fees, you're going to have extra maintenance costs, right? If you had a long-term tenant, you're not paying for cleaning on a regular basis. Whereas Airbnbs, it's kind of expected that you're going to pay to have it cleaned so that when the next guest comes, they're not sleeping on dirty sheets from the previous tenant or guest, right? So there's a lot more to the equation when you're converting a property to a short-term rental. You really need to dig in. You really need to model it out and figure it out what that's going to look like. Also, the wear and tear on the property itself is very different when you've got high turnover versus one stable tenant that stays for months at a time. So all of these things, you're really going to have to look into it. Now, part of that cost and financial implications is also related to taxes, right? There is what we lovingly refer to as the short-term rental loophole, where if you hit the criteria, you can turn what was previously passive income in your rental into non-passive income that can offset things like your W-2. So that can be a big factor. You're laying out a lot of cash to set the place up to be a short-term rental, but at the same time, you might be putting yourself in a better tax position. So all of these things, we have to weigh the pros and cons. Now, property management, right? It is not the same to manage a property that is a short-term rental versus a long-term rental, which maybe seems obvious, but if you've not done it, if you haven't looked into it, you might not realize how different it is. So short-term rental, right? You're kind of like running a small vacation company. So you need to have advertisements. There's a lot of non-property work that has to happen, like keeping up Airbnb listings and VRBO, and maybe you've got a website and all those kind of things, right? So there could be an argument for having property management. But again, there's a downside, right? It's going to cut into your profits. And if you're trying to use a short term rental for those tax savings we were just talking about, well, probably the having a property manager involved will probably knock you out of the short term rental loophole. Not 100% guaranteed, but probably. So if your property is not anywhere near you, or for whatever reason you're just not able to manage it, it's something that you need to take into consideration. It might make your property cash flow better to be a short-term rental instead of a long-term rental with the property management, but if you're doing it for tax purposes, it could be a big problem. So we got to watch out for that. Insurance and liability. Holy cow, insurance. I mean, I'm in Florida, right? Our insurance is astronomical. Property insurance is crazy here. But, if you're having people stay in a property that you own, there's always a potential that someone could get hurt. You need to make sure that you are properly insured. You have to read those policies and see if it covers you for short-term rentals, right? You might need something more specialized. You got to talk to your insurance agent and see what coverage you have and if there's anything else that you need. But it still could be a good thing. You just got to take everything into consideration, right? Like all business decisions, there's good, there's bad, there's pros, there's cons, there's positives, there's negatives. And this is something that we actually help clients work with. Should I turn this long-term rental into a short-term one? And for tax purposes, because, we're tax people, a lot of times this is what we do. We are like, all right, you got a property, turn it short-term. Or if you're getting into a property, have it be a short-term rental, hit that short-term rental loophole because it is so good for taxes. Have you ever done this? Is there anybody who's taken their long-term, turned it into a short-term? Probably a lot more vice versa, right? Probably a lot more short-terms and turn it into long-terms. But I'm so curious to hear if you have a story of converting your long-term into a short-term rental, and what did you have to do? What did you go through? Any problems that occurred there, or did it just work out fantastically? Who knows? Drop a comment. We'd love to hear about it. And we'll see you next time. Thank you for watching. If you found this helpful, please leave a comment, like, and subscribe. Stay tuned for more tips on growing your business and your wealth. Bye.